All right, guys, we're ready to jump into Lightroom. Now, the biggest thing we're going to be doing here is removing objects from these photographs because the exposure and color, they're pretty good. We're going to change those a little bit, but we do have some other objects in the photos that we need to get rid of, and they're pretty large. So we're going to do this in two different ways. We're going to show you how to use the adjustment brush and how to use the spot removal. All right, guys, we got a great tutorial. Let's jump into Lightroom. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here, let's go ahead and make sure we're clicked on Tailor Long Exposure so we can see here our shots. Now, we have a few different effects. If I double click here, we can see that basically these are when we use the long exposure and move the camera around during the exposure itself. So I'm going to go through and choose my picks. So starting off, this is my first pick here. All right, that one is really cool as well. Okay, this one not going to get a pick, and that one's not going to get a pick as well. There's nothing like wrong with these shots. I just don't like them as much as these ones here. So in this case, basically we've got two picks. So I'm going to hit G to get back to our grid view. We're going to go to our attribute tab, and I'm going to see just my picks, and I can hold Control or Command and click on the two of those and hit C for compare. So I can just compare these side by side. And I kind of like this side profile image just a little bit better. It's a little bit more clean. I like that I can see like another ghosted version of Taylor. So that's the image we're going to edit. So I'm going to click here and go ahead and give it a red tag and a 5-star rating. Okay, now going back into our grid view, we're going to double click on this image. And again, our exposure is pretty good with Taylor. We're going to work on that in a minute. But the main thing I want to do is get rid of this. So here you can see a little bit of the softbox that we use to light Taylor, both for continuous light and for strobe light. And here we can see the house. So basically what I've got to do is remove these like pretty large objects from the photograph. Now, thankfully my background is almost completely black. So that makes this much easier. So let's jump in. We'll show you guys how to do it using two different methods. Okay, so because we're going to do two different versions of removing all this, I'm going to go ahead and create a virtual copy of this photograph. So I'm going to right click here on our film strip and go up to Create Virtual Copy. Okay, and these are basically like two versions of the same image. So let's go ahead and start with this version. Now I'm going to click on the Develop tab here. Okay, and the first tool that we're going to use is actually going to be the Adjustment Brush tool. So let's click on our Adjustment Brush. Now, with the Adjustment Brush, basically you can paint any area that you'd like. Let's just paint a little bit over our subject's face just to show you guys how that works. And then I can change my sliders here, and it's only going to change wherever I've painted. So you can adjust your highlights, shadows, basically everything you would have access to normally. You can do that just over a certain area. So let's go ahead and hover over there. So I'm going to click there and then hit the delete key. It's just going to get rid of it right now. So in this case, because I have a very dark background, what I can do is I can just darken it down way more. So I'm going to click here and simply paint right over top of our little house area. All right, I can get a little bit larger if I need. I can paint a little bit more that I need to because I can always subtract from this selection. Okay, so I painted over my house area and I can't really see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my exposure and just drag this down a little bit. There we go. And we can see already that's done a pretty good job. Now in this case, we can see that I've painted over top of my subject. So if you painted over top of your subject or whatever, you can keep in mind you can always click and drag and move this around if you need to. But you can also click back on it, which activates this tab. Okay, I'm going to make my brush smaller using the open brackets. You open and close brackets will make it larger or smaller. And I'm going to hold Alt or Option, which is going to bring up my minus key. So I can actually minus this area now from my selection. So if you overpaint a little bit, no big deal. You can always use the minus key and just minus that out a little bit better. Okay, there we go. So we're going to go ahead and bring our exposure basically all the way down here. So that did a pretty good job. Let's just hit the slash key to see there's the before and the after. Okay, slash is right above your return or enter key on your keyboard. Okay, so we can see it's done a pretty good job, but it didn't do the job all the way. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to click on New. Okay, we're still going to be with our brush tool here, and I'm just basically just going to do another one of these. So we're going to paint right over here. All right, let's go all the way around this image, and I'm going to take my exposure and bring it back down, all the way down with this one as well. So let's click here to activate. Whichever one of these is highlighted, basically, that's what's activated. So I can add to this selection simply by clicking on it first and then adding to it. make my brush a little bit bigger. And there we go. We're going to go up here as well. There we go. And then I'm going to hold Alt or Option and minus it out because I got the coat just a little bit on accident. There we go. Okay, so basically what we've done is we've chosen both of these. We've done this twice. Basically, we've painted over here and brought our exposure way down. So I'm going to click on our adjustment brush again, and I'm going to go all the way up to the top and just bring our exposure up to just see, okay, what's left from my original house. And it looks like there's still a little bit left here. So I'm going to bring our exposure back to 0. Okay, we're going to do this one more time. So there we go. Let's just click right over here. Make my brush nice and large here. There we go. Kind of paint all over here. All right, and we're going to bring our exposure all the way down to 0. Now this works because my background is black, right? If your background had a bunch of detail in it, this is obviously not going to work for object removal. That's why we're going to show you 2 different methods. All right, let's go ahead and turn that back off and then go to our exposure, bring that up, and we're looking really good. Okay. So that's basically our first technique for removing our objects. Now I am going to bring our exposure up just a little bit so we have a little bit more detail in our subject, and I'm going to bring our vibrance up a little bit more as well. And that's just going to kind of enhance this orange color, and I'm going to bring up our clarity just a little bit as well. Okay, so that's pretty much what I would do for actually editing this photograph. It doesn't need much. I'd probably crop this in, so I'm going to hit R for the crop tool. Okay, and then just crop this in just a little bit from the left side. And I can change, where it says aspect, I can go, let's go back to custom, and then you can kind of choose your own aspect ratio. Oh, there we go. Click on custom, there we go, and you can kind of choose your own aspect ratio. Oh, it's locked right now, so go ahead and unlock that. All right, there we go. It's always trying to lock. Quit trying to lock on me. What are you doing over there? And the last thing we're going to do is just crop the image a little bit. So I'm going to click on our crop tool. We're going to make sure this is unlocked, and I'm just going to bring this in just a little bit here, holding shift to maintain my aspect ratio. And there we go. Because all that black space, we didn't need to see all that. So I'm going to hit enter there, and there we go. So we have our subject, really cool streak in the back, and all that is removed. You'd never even know there was something there. Okay, pretty cool. So that's basically our first technique, which involved using the adjustment brush a couple of times and bringing the exposure way down. Now our next technique is going to be using the spot removal tool. So let's go ahead and back to our other virtual copy and remove the same object using a different technique. So let's go to our other virtual copy here. This is our original here, so we can see very similar. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just sync these 2 settings. So I'm going to hold Control or Command and click on these 2. There we go. And we're going to go to Sync Settings. Now in this case, I don't want to check much. Okay, we want to check our white balance, and I want to check our basic tone, and we're going to turn our clarity on as well, and our color. But we don't want to sync our local brush adjustments. Okay, we don't want to do anything like that I did to remove that object. So we're going to hit Synchronize there. I didn't sync the crop either. So basically we're just syncing the color and exposure. So now we're going to go ahead and double click here. We're going to remove this area using the spot removal tool. So let's go to our develop tab. Okay, next we're going to click here on our spot removal. So let's go ahead and click there, and we have a few different options. We have the option to clone, or we have the option to heal. Now clone is going to create an exact copy of wherever your clone source is, and heal will try to blend the 2 together. So in this case, we're going to click on clone. Now we're going to start here at the very top. I'm going to just simply paint right over here. All right, there we go. And it's going to try to choose the area it thinks is going to work best. So right now it's cloning her head right here and putting it over there. So we don't want that. I'm going to click on this little area here and just drag this up. There we go. Drag it down just a little bit. All right, cool. So we can see it's kind of cloned in that area. Now, basically, we're just going to do this a few more times. So drag this area here. All right, and I'm going to click and drag this right down here. Now, we don't have a ton of area to work with here. We just have like these couple of like black areas basically. So I have to kind of do this in different pieces. I just wanted to show you that you can do this with your spot removal tool. And in this case, it probably makes more sense to do this the first technique rather than the second technique. However, you're not always going to have the option to just make things really dark. You're not always going to be photographing on a black background. There we go. And let's just bring that right down here. All right. Oops, I grabbed the wrong one. Let's hit undo there. Let's grab this down and drag this right down there. So you get the idea. Basically, we're just painting over a little area here. All right, it's going to try to choose where it thinks is the best place, and I'm just going to always click and like drag that to black. All right, there we go. Let's do a little bit more, and I'm going to just keep doing this over and over again. It's a little bit tedious. But if you did have other objects you wanted to remove in the background, this is a great way to do it. Now in this case, I'm just going to the same place over and over again, but you can most definitely draw from different places. And generally the spot removal tool is a lot more handy when it comes to like removing blemishes or like a little piece of trash in your photo or something like that, like smaller objects. Generally you're not going to be using it too much to, to completely knock out one of these larger areas. This is generally where I would either use the adjustment brushes within Lightroom like we did earlier, or I would just pop this into Photoshop and just paint black with like a big black brush. That's generally what I would do. All right, so it's on for the most part. I would still, in this case, like it's still a little bit visible here. So in this case, I would still go in with our adjustment brush. There we go. And still paint over here and then lower the exposure on that. There we go. Cool, and there we go. We can see everything is completely gone. So we basically used a combination there of different techniques. We got most of it gone with our spot removal tool, and then we brought in our adjustment brush to just kind of darken that up a little bit. All right, let's hit R. There we go. For our crop, I'm going to hold the Shift key, and we're going to bring that down just a little bit more as well. Okay, so there we go. Basically, we have two different versions of basically the exact same image that we've used two different variations of removing that big object from the left-hand side of our photos. So you guys can see, if you have a large object in your photo that you need to be removed, you can do this in several different ways. And it's going to totally depend on the context of your photograph. So if it's relatively simple like this, you can do all that within Lightroom. When you need something a little bit more complex removed, that's when you're going to want to jump into Photoshop. And we're going to be doing that throughout Photo Editing 201 and 301. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next chapter. Bye, everyone.